At the time of this recording, at least 217 people have been killed by Israeli bombs in Gaza. 63 of them were children, the vast majority non-combatants. Israel has leveled residential buildings, towers housing international media outlets, all the roads leading to Gaza's trauma hospital, a Doctors Without Borders hospital, and refugee camps. In the al-Shati refugee camp massacre on May 15th, they killed 7 members of the same family huddled in their home. And in one single air raid on May 16th, they killed 42 civilians.
Wait a minute. May 15, May 16, but this is happening in October. Yeah, this is Abi Martin. She's an independent journalist. She has done an excellent job on Israel for the past years. This video has 2 years already. And here she debunks a lot of the things that are being argued nowadays. And before I start this video, first of all, thank you for the people who leave comments and who share this work. Please subscribe the channel, share it with other people. I do feel that these subjects that I talk about in this channel are not very favorable for the YouTube algorithm. I have a lot of discrepancies in views. I have videos with like 5,000, so 1,000 or something, and then videos which barely reach 100. And I'm not sure what it is. Nevertheless, putting that aside, because the most important thing is to put the information out there, right? So when you start to see this, you think that this is like they're talking about a recent past, but no, this is actually a trend. If you research on the internet about the subject, about violence in Palestine between the different groups and Israel, the story repeats itself. The story repeats itself. And now the subject of the moment seems to be, the hot topic of the moment seems to be the hospital bombing in Gaza, which was assumed by many. I also assumed this, that Israel did it because they are the ones who are heavily bombing Gaza with no regard for human life. This must be said, and this is actually proven by people on the ground. They are doing indiscriminately. They are committing war crimes, and they are admitting, and they are using a language of war criminals, like dehumanizing their supposed enemies. At the same time, they save some space. The Israelis do this as well, and the Europeans and the US, they save some space to say Hamas is not the Palestinian people. Yeah, so what is the practical effect of that sentence? None. They are bombing Palestinian people indiscriminately. Palestinian people are victims both in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank, and they have been for decades. I repeat. I do much sound like I am taking a blinded, one-sided part in this, but there is nothing I can do. I also showed in previous videos, and I talked about the Jewish communities that are against this, because we know they are the Zionists. Those are the vicious, the aggressive ones. This is described by Orthodox Jews all over the world, not only in Israel, but you see protests all over the world in Arab communities, naturally, but also by Jewish communities. And in the United States, for example, you see people demonstrating on the streets on behalf of the Palestinian people because they know what is going on. And so when one side is using unproportional force against the other, after a long history of violence, it is very hard to interpret it any other way. You have to look at it objectively, and this is what I try to do. Please, if you think that I'm wrong, please express that in the comments. I do genuinely thank you if you do that. Let me know what you think about this in the comments. If you know information that I am missing out, and maybe I'm having a wrong judgment because I do not have enough information, also point that out. I'm not a propagandist. I am trying to deliver an honest message. Okay, having said this, let's proceed to the hospital issue. Israel denies that it had bombed the hospital, which killed 500 people and injured many more. I mean, it's horrific. It's horrific. The images are simply horrific. And the United States bought into their version immediately. I mean, no investigation, no anything. They bought into their version immediately, and they vowed, Mr. Sleepy Joey Biden has vowed unconditional support, has before, and has vowed for in the future. Forever, as he said. And of course, the Palestinians have, of course, their own version of the deed of this tragedy, and Israel presents their set of proof. Yes, that Israel has concluded and has presented proof. This is in many news outlets about this bombing in the hospital. So let's see what. Israel claims this was a rocket launched by the Islamic Jihad, and this rocket was lost guidance, was mistakenly fired. Something went through, some technical problem occurred, and the rocket, because it was being launched somewhere and the trajectory was near the hospital, the rocket impacted the hospital and provoking the catastrophe we all seen. And then they presented very sketchy footage and a recording of a conversation. And why am I smiling? Because when I heard the recording, and you can please go and look it on the web, it's easy to find, between supposedly two jihadists talking about them and saying, one asking the other, "Oh, it was our rocket," and say, "Yeah, it was ours," and like obviously stating that they were admitting this, and this is supposedly an intercepted communication. Of course, this, for any person with like we'd say in Portugal, with two fingers in the forehead, a minimum amount of gray matter, we can see that this is very, very easy forgeable, or very easy. This evidence is not consistent. Also, the footage has been claimed to be from other bombings. And what do the Palestinians on their turn offer? Well, a very substantial claim, I must say. And it was actually, if I may say so, it was not even their claim. It was Israelis' claim. And I show you. I'm going to read this from Al Jazeera, but then I already made my own copy of the tweet. There was a tweet by 10:58 p.m., writes Al Jazeera. Naftali apologized on X, or Twitter, former Twitter, for sharing a Reuters report that falsely stated Israel struck the hospital. He said he had since deleted the tweet. As Israeli army does not bomb hospitals, I assumed Israel was targeting one of the Hamas bases in Gaza, he added. And so what happened was this. I show you. This is the, see if I can, sorry. Okay. This is the tweet by Hanan Naftali. And he wrote immediately after, Israel Air Force struck a Hamas terrorist base inside the hospital in Gaza. A multiple number of terrorists are dead. It's heartbreaking that Hamas is launching rockets from hospitals, mosques, schools, and using civilians as human shield. So this was a clear admission that Israel was the one bombing this hospital. And of course, he tweeted later, as it's stated here in the Al Jazeera, that he was mistaken. He thought that, of course, they bombed it because it was Hamas base. Oh, but then he remembered, Israel doesn't bomb hospitals, which is fake, by the way. I mean, Israel had even given notice to evacuate everything, including hospitals. And people are saying that on the side of Israel, okay, I'm not, let me put this forward. I'm not stating that I know for sure that it was Israel. But this is for you to think about and decide for yourself. I do not give early verdicts. Who am I to do that? I'm just putting forward the things that I read and see and judging and comparing with the historic of the behavior of each side. And since this bombing campaign, because bombing campaigns in Gaza by the side of Israel have been many. There have been many accounts of civilians and children slaughtered by these bombings. Like Abi Martin was stating in the beginning of this video, right? And so it's up to you to decide. I think someone screwed up, admitted the bombing. This is my take, all right? This is my opinion. It's worth whatever you want it to be worth it. This is my opinion, and I think they screwed big time when they admitted, and then they realized the magnitude of the damage, the atrocity that had been committed. And then they needed to change the narrative, because I think there is within Israel, within the Israeli government, a realization that the world is watching this closely, and the world is not so in tune with, for example, as it was with Ukraine, that when the Russians came in and shocked everyone, and everyone was like, what is going on? And that was a lot of condemnation, but Israel has a long history of being violent towards these people. It has a long history of occupation and apartheid. This is not me saying or theorizing. This is not a tinfoil conspiracy. It's very much proven. I mean, the people who refuse to see this, they must have an agenda. This is also my opinion. This is the judgment that I pass. Right? So, but of course, the United States doesn't need any proof other than the word given by Israel, right? The others are already dehumanized. The Hamas terrorists are not human, so they are easy to. Of course, the Palestinians are paying in general. So, and what does the EU does? The EU, who should be, I mean, someone has to play the wise man, the person who thinks thoroughly before taking decisions and giving rush statements. The EU has long lost its place in this position. So, what did we have since October 7 from Ursula von der Leyen and Michel? You know, Ursula von der Leyen, the low-cost version of evil on earth. They were simply parroting the US statements, the US narrative. Parroting. I mean, they immediately, recall this, they immediately retrieved the aid to the non-government organizations that are doing humanitarian work in Gaza. Of course, they backtracked this decision. And now they are even claiming that they are increasing the aid packages. But there is one problem, because this is inconsequential at least so far, because aid is not being permitted into the Gaza Strip. Israel already put out a statement saying that it will permit, but so far, uh, uh, the Gaza Strip is. I mean, if it hasn't ran out already of water and basic things, it will soon. It soon will. So, and then you have the political correct people that come out on TV and big channels and want to have a neutral, moderate stance, and they say, "Oh, at least it was very important, the intervention of the United States diplomacy, because they reversed the decisions by Israel to do this what I call medieval siege of starving and the people to death and cutting their water and things like this." But what happens is that Israel has already destroyed the infrastructure that makes possible the water supply, for example, in many parts of the Gaza, if not in the totality of Gaza. I do not know the exact details. And so and of course, adding on top of this, the United States moved his army, moved its forces. It's not just it's 2 aircraft carrier groups and thousands of military personnel. This is not humanitarian aid, like they claim. They're gonna do everything to do humanitarian aid, but at the same time, they only mention their solidarity to Israel. So yeah, this goes to show. This is like I know I'm pressing the same key. I've been pressing it for days. But the thing is, every time I wake up and go and search for the headlines, go and search in the alt media, I do not see a change in the pattern, in the behavior pattern. Both in the US and both in Israel. Of course, they cry to the four winds. I don't know if in English they have this expression. About human rights and liberty and democracy and all of this, and they condemn terrorism everywhere. But the thing is that war crime is a war crime. It doesn't matter if it's a democracy who makes it, or if it's a random group or an autocracy or whatever. This is international law. It's written, it's well written. And talking about rules of engagement in war, and changing a little bit the geographic place for my comment, you know that there was all this discussion about the US supplying ATACMS missiles to Ukraine, right? So they were refusing at the beginning, like they did with every other weapon. They refused, but at the time they were refusing, or at the time they were changing from refusal to acceptance, the weapons were already there. Right? This has been the pattern of the supplying of weapons to Ukraine. And so now the ATACMS was the same. They were already there, and they were used, if I'm not mistaken, yesterday or the day before, for the first time against the Russians. It took them by surprise. And there's one detail to notice about this ATACMS missile, is that they carry cluster munition. They drop hundreds of bomblets, grenade-sized bomblets. And we know what this kind of weapon does, right? So it's a forbidden weapon. It's a weapon that the US has condemned its usage in the past. And they were the first to open the precedent now, again, by supplying them to Ukraine and letting Ukraine use them as they wish. Of course, the latest news is that they used it against military targets. But we have reports from the past that Ukraine had committed war crimes using this kind of cluster munition against civilian in Donetsk, for example. And so it goes to show that it's a big circus, right? I'm sure some of you think that I'm here stating the obvious most of the times. And for me, what I have to say, what I can respond to that is that it's sad that I have to state the obvious. Because when I go through the comments on social media, when I go to the comments to the most horrific news, the most horrific, and I see this blind, anger-driven comments, anger and ignorance-driven comments against people that they haven't met and they have no idea how to be in their shoes or don't even make an effort. And so I feel the urge, the need, many times to state and repeat the obvious. War crimes must be denounced, and the message has to be repeated. Don't remember that this is one of the it's one of the propaganda tools. It's repetition, and many times lies are repeated until they are accepted as truth. Never forget this. So it's never too much. I hope you understand. I hope you support this channel. I try to put some information in the between my ranting. And I just want to give one more account before ending this video. That I don't want to accuse Israel unjustly. I don't want to generalize the evil perpetrated by Israel, the evil deeds, to all its population. The same, I mean, this is always, by rule, a mistake to do. It's the same that saying that Ukrainians are all Nazis. This is also wrong, right? Of course, what you have is dominant groups within these societies that decide the policy, and then they represent all the others, and this is the problem, right? Well, we have to pay attention to this. I found this in a Portuguese outlet, but I translate it as I read it. So, Francesca Albanese, she's an envoy to the UN in Palestine, and she says that a lot of the critic that she believes to be benevolent, excessively benevolent to Israel from the international community, are actually war crimes that she points out, crimes against humanity. In her opinion, the Palestinians are helpless. They cannot defend themselves, or at least they cannot defend themselves properly. This is why I am sometimes reluctant. I know that many countries, even Russia, condemns the deeds of Hamas, but and I also condemn every terrorist deed. But desperation causes this. Desperation ferments, brews this kind of behaviors. Don't forget the root causes of this conflict. So this is what she says. She I'm not going to read through the whole article, but she claims that what she sees Israel doing in Palestine are crimes against humanity. The reporter then asks her how does she describe the situation, the humanitarian situation in Gaza, and she says there is a humanitarian catastrophe of Olympic dimensions. This is of huge dimensions. Even before the October 7, Gaza was under blockade, illegal blockade that has lasted at least 16 years. 16 years under siege, under blockade. Just let this sink in. Or maybe you already did. There are no resources. 7 in each 10 out of 10 persons depend from humanitarian aid. Half of the population is unemployed. A lot of infantile mortality. All the indicators show how devastating the blockade is. It is a punishing, collective punishing, and it fits in the frame of a war crime. The territory is occupied even without the army being there. Israel controls ins and outs, entrances and exits. And since 7 October, at the date of this interview, till the date of this interview, over 2,800 Palestinians were killed. We know that the numbers are much more. They are over 4,000 now. Remember that Israel dropped like 6,000 bombs in 6 days. It's something hard to imagine. In Gaza, that little strip. And then people are like surprised. Would Israel commit such an humanitarian atrocity like that to bomb a hospital? Yes, it is possible. It is possible. I'm just saying. Possibility, strong possibility exists. So, there are 50,000 pregnant at risk, pregnant women. This population has faced wars, big-scale wars with Israel. And then she points out and this is very important to point out, 2008, 2009, 2012, 2021, 2014, 2021, and 2022. Before 7 October, the number of people killed in Gaza between adults are 4,200 people, and 1,200 children. So how does this fit in when you feel so sorry, when you are so pitiful talking about the victims of Israel? Of course, we have to be sorry by all the victims, but you cannot just stop there. Your heart has to open a little bit more, otherwise you are just an utter hypocrite, or an ignorant, or someone with an agenda, therefore evil, or the three at the same time. Sorry for this ranting. And yeah, I mean, now about 100 schools shelter 1 million displaced. Dozens of thousands of housings are destroyed. Hospitals are saturated without medicine, water. Palestinians are drinking seawater, salt water, contaminated. And Israel prevents humanitarian aid from being delivered. And I will stop there. Let me know what you think about the development of the things, this conflict there in Palestine. And that's it. That's it from me today, and I hope to see you. I am not sure if I can keep up with the everyday video posting. Let me know if you want me to do this, or if I'm saturating your ears with many times repeating narratives. And yeah, till the next time. And of course, if you like this video, please subscribe, follow this channel, help it grow a little bit, help it enhance its contribution in the information space. Thank you very much. Tune in for the next one.
Só para ouvir.